Alrighty, this is going to be my spoiler review for Among the Burning Flowers by Samantha Shannon. This will be the last video that I'm doing on the Roots of Chaos series. As those who've seen all of the other videos that I've made, you know that I did not like the priority, but I loved this book. So here's the spoiler review for why I love this book and why I thought it was better than at least the first 300 pages of the priority. So this will only include spoilers for all of this book and 300 pages of this book. First things first, I would like to say that I probably don't know the correct pronunciation for any of these people's names, so whoops, but hopefully I get it right. The first half of this book is split into two sections, a before and after. They're very easy to read. I read the before in a day and the after in a day. It's a 250-page book, very, very fast read, and yet very, very well done. The first half is about two characters, Donna Morosa, who is the heir to the kingdom of Yiscallan, I don't know how you pronounce that. And we do meet her in The Priory of the Orange Tree, and she was one of the characters that we met in the first 300 pages, who I was like, oh, hi, you're interesting, oh, and then she was gone. And I was like, hello, where'd you go? She was gone pretty quickly. And so she is one of the reasons why I was really excited to read this book, because I enjoyed her in The Priory, and I knew that this book would have a lot to do with her. She and one other character, Estina Malaugo, take up the first half. I think there might be one part where we see Abrecht, but I'm not 100% sure. They take up the vast majority of the first half of this book. My favorite out of the two of them is Malaugo. She is fabulous. She is a very obvious representation of sapphic energy, which I think is awesome. The Priory of the Orange Tree, I genuinely didn't know anything going into this other than that there were dragons. After posting some of my reviews, people were like, oh, this gets sapphic. And I was like, it does? I knew that Niklas, mentions his previous gay lover, but, other than that, I didn't really see a ton, at least in this first book. And then people were mentioning who gets together, and I was like, really? How did I just did not see that. In comparison, this one, it came very strong from the very beginning. I really enjoyed that, actually, because it was really clear. And it was with Malaugo, and I thought her character was phenomenal. I cared about her from the moment we saw her. And I was like, what's going on? Why is she living in a tree? Why is she starving? I felt her sense of pride wanting to, not just be handed an out. We meet Harlow, who also shows up in the Priory for, 5 seconds. I thought he seemed really interesting, and I was like, why aren't we getting any more of his character? Well, we definitely got him here. We might get him more in this book. I don't know, but for the first 300 pages, he's a blip on the radar. But I loved Malaugo's character. I loved her interactions with Harlow. I loved her interactions with her lover, Liat, or however you pronounce her name. I thought they were just a fabulous, that whole narrative was so well done, and it was really enjoyable. And even though it's incomplete in the sense that clearly there's more to come, I also felt like I really knew this character, and this, at least for her story, was a satisfying wrap-up by the time that she no longer has any more page space, which happens halfway through the book. Then the book transitions over to fully being about Donna Morosa and Abrecht, and I thought both of them were really cute, and I did enjoy reading this. I would say that I think Samantha Shannon struggles a little bit when writing characters in towers or in palaces. I don't know why, it just gets a little boring to me. And I've read other political stories that are focused in that location that I think just grasped my attention a little bit better, but I still thought she did a good job. I think the death of her bodyguard, Armando, when he dies, that really, really hurt emotionally, and I loved that because it really reflected that I cared about his character, even though he was a side character. I mean, when he died and when she describes him hanging from the gate and how he doesn't have, the lower part of his legs, it just was heartbreaking and devastating, and I was so saddened by this. And I was like, yes, this is very, very different than when Kit died in this book, because I was sad, but I was also like, I don't know you well enough, and we haven't had enough page space with you, and we haven't had enough references to you for me to really feel this and mourn this sudden death that really just feels like your character, was tossed aside without more that could have been done there. Versus Hernando died at the right time. He died at the time in which makes sense for the plot and is still devastating and heartbreaking to read. So that was really well done. I will say, from what I gained from this book and from this book, Abrecht is, the way I clock him right now is that he's somebody who's in love with the idea of being in love. He has met Morosa for 12 days. They've sent letters back and forth, but the level of loyalty and attachment that he holds towards her genuinely doesn't make sense to me as something that is based in a foundational depth that makes sense. I felt the exact same way with him falling in love with Queen Sabran in this book, and it was one of the things that drove me crazy when I read it, when I DNF'd around page 300, was that one of the other characters was like, I looked into his eyes and saw how much he loved her, and I'm like, they barely know each other. And for me, what this really means is that Abrecht is, for me, I think Abrecht is very in love with the idea of being in love, and he's that kind of cinnamon rolly character, I guess. I don't know if I can call him a cinnamon roll. I don't know. He just he wants to be loyal, he wants to love, and that's just what he wants to do. And I don't think it matters who that's directed towards, as long as it is consistent, whoever it's towards. So he decided it was going to be the Donna Morosa, and then was really sad when it couldn't be, but then was like, I guess I'm going to have to shift over and make it Sabran, which we get at the end of this book and in this book. And then he does that, and now he's loyal and in love with Sabran. And I'm like, okay, all right. I just don't buy the depth, I guess, is what I'm really saying. I don't buy the depth of his feelings, because I genuinely don't think that he knows what that kind of depth is. It's based, in my opinion, his emotional romantic connection to the two women that he's presented as being paired with. Those connections are fantasies, I think. And I don't think he realizes that they're fantasies, and that he's connected to them emotionally because of an internal desire to just be in love and have a companion, versus actually knowing this character and wanting this specific person, be it the Don Matamoros or being Queen Sabran. So that's how I felt about his character. Didn't make me dislike him. It just was, I was like, okay, all right. I don't observe the emotional depth as much with regards to his romantic journeys and decisions. And I really like that the Damara Morosa reflects this when she talks about Abrecht. She acknowledges that it is a fantasy and that it's not really about him. He's nice, but she doesn't really care. I mean, she does. She's like, I would prefer somebody who is a good person to, have children with and marry, but I just want to get away from my father so bad that really I'll put up with whoever it is. Just get me out of this hellhole. So Abrecht is like a good choice, and she creates in her mind a vision of what could be. But I think that Damara Morosa is far more honest with her sense of like, I don't really know this person. We could probably make this work. This is a form of freedom for me. Definitely want that. So I really liked her perspective for her relationship with Abrecht, because I was like, okay, yes, like that's actually what's happening here. This is a marriage of convenience for the nations, and this is highly convenient for her to accomplish her personal goals. And Abrecht is a nice person, so she's fine with it. And he's, not half bad to look at, so it's fine. But she, I think, really acknowledges that what she's in love with is the fantasy of freedom that can come from marrying Abrecht. Whereas Abrecht talks about her as if he's in love with her, but he's actually reflecting being in love with the idea of being in love and the fantasy of having a spouse, of having a companion, and wanting that. And so I'm not quite sure to what extent Samantha Shannon intended for Abrecht to reflect that, but I definitely think she intended for the Don Matamoros to reflect just a strong desire for freedom. And I really respected that. I thought it was great. As I said in my previous post, this is not a wrapped up story. So this definitely, is a lead into what happens in The Priory of the Orange Tree. And I think if I had read this before, I would have liked this more, mainly because we run into at least 3 of the characters, I think. 2 of the characters. We run into Abrecht, we run into the Don Matamoros, and then I think this book ever so casually references like Locke and Kit at one point at the very end. I think those moments, if I had read this first, those moments would have been like cute little Easter eggs when I was reading this, where I would have been like, oh my god, hi, how are you? So despite the fact that some characters in this book were annoying me, that would have been really nice to see those characters show up here. And also, I would have hung on to this book because I would have wanted to see Malaugo again. Absolutely. I would definitely want to know where she shows up in this book. I hope she does, because she needs the rest of her story, and it'd be weird if it just finished in this book, but I'm guessing she shows up in here, and I would have kept going in this book to find Malaugo if I could have. But alas, that's not the order in which I read them. I read this second. It's still phenomenal and fabulous. I'm too angry at this book to continue it for now. So I just think that this was so well done and so heartbreaking. I love Malaugo. I love her journey towards finding self-love with her romantic partner, Liat. I think Liat was a great person to present herself. I thought she was really fascinating and quite interesting. So I had a lot of fun with these characters and getting to know them. I thought this was quite fabulously done. So as I mentioned before, this is a 4.5 star. I am keeping The Roots of Chaos because of this book. I would not have otherwise. I'm not going to read the rest of them for now, but I definitely am a bit more intrigued than I was before because I read this book. Anyways, loved it. Thought it was fabulous. Keep reading what you love. This is the very last video I'm doing on Samantha Shannon for a long time. It is time to move on to something else. But there you go. There's my spoiler evaluation of this book.